I have with me Doug Constable, and we're going to be talking about insolvency. Doug, welcome to Dollars a Sense.
Thank you.
Now, before we start, what's your background?
My background's in finance planning and accounting.
Okay. Now, insolvency, that's a pretty popular subject these days. What is it?
It's basically where someone can't pay their debts and they've got more debts than what they've got the ability to pay.
So it's as simple as that. They don't have any money, they can't pay their bills.
Can't pay their bills.
Okay, so what's the typical client?
Yeah, the typical client really is a small businessman or woman that's run up some debts, hasn't been able to pay their GST or their tax commitments, or a private individual, and it's mostly credit cards that they've been taking out a few too many credit cards to pay their bills.
So how do you help them? Where do you get involved?
Yeah, I get involved basically working with them to establish firstly what their real debts are and how they can pay them, and if they can't pay them, we work with a trustee or a liquidator to wind up their affairs so that they can draw a line in the sand and start again.
What are the most common questions you're normally asked in your position?
Yeah, undoubtedly there's one that stands out, and that is, what do I do if someone knocks on the door, or how do I stop the phone calls?
Okay, so if you get the heavy that comes around, he bangs on the door and says, if you don't pay me, I'm going to rip your head off, sort of thing, what do you do?
I think that's fairly much a myth. Undoubtedly heavies, if you like to call them that, do come around, but they really are only using their size and that to try and intimidate you. Not to actually beat you up or anything like that. So the way to handle that is to just deal with them and say, I don't work after hours, or I don't talk about that after hours, and I'll talk to you tomorrow about it. So you've virtually got to stand up to them in a certain way, just be firm in, you're not going to be intimidated by them.
So you're obviously going to see, or most people go and see their accountant every year. They'll have a financial planner involved, they'll have their local solicitor. Why wouldn't they be helping them instead of somebody like you? Yeah,
look, it's an area I've got into that's a fairly specialised area, and it's basically because of experience. If you go to your accountant, your typical accountant has a lot of broad knowledge about tax and how to structure a business and that, but most probably they're not dealing every day with people that are in financial trouble. Similar situation with a lawyer. A lawyer is more used to dealing with people in courts and not dealing with the coalface, if you like. Yeah.
Now, Doug, here's an example. I've woke up one day and I realised that I've got too many credit card debts. I owe the tax department, I owe the bank, or I owe the guy next door. What do I do?
Sit down and write a list of how much you owe and how much you what ability you've got to repay it, and then either deal with them directly or approach someone like me that deals with the banks and comes to an arrangement to pay it off. And if you can't pay it off, then to act quickly, to draw that line in the sand and either do one of the things in the Bankruptcy Act, which is either a Part 9 or a Part 10 or a bankruptcy, or wind up the company as quickly as possible before the creditors do get upset.
So how do you actually go and do those types of things?
Yes, the best way to do it is there's ITSA, which is Insolvency Trustee Services. You can ring them and go bankrupt through them, or you can deal with a private trustee. If you deal with someone like me, I would introduce you to a private trustee, or in the form of liquidation, you go to a liquidator and he would liquidate the company for you.
Now, if you go and do that, and if you do end up going bankrupt,
yes,
that affects your CRA.
Yes, look, that's one of the beauties of bankruptcy, if you like. If you're in that situation, I'm certainly not suggest just do it willy-nilly, but if you're in that situation, there's a thing called a Part 10 of the Bankruptcy Act, where you make an offer to your creditors to pay part of the money. Now, the difficulty with a Part 10 arrangement and that type of thing is that your credit rating is affected normally for 7 years, and while you're under that Part 10 arrangement, you can't be a director and there's other restrictions. If you go bankrupt and you have the ability to, or you come across some money or someone will loan you money down the road, there's a Section 73 of the Bankruptcy Act where you can actually have your bankruptcy annulled. And the beauty of that is, the meaning of annulment is it never took place. So the easiest way to clear your credit rating in the shortest space of time is in actual fact to go bankrupt and have the annulment.
So how do you make that choice? Who gives you that advice?
In many instances, it's the advice is based on the person's experience of what they do. With my background in finance, I found it very difficult for a lot of people that had been bankrupt or done a Part 10 to get credit and get finance because it was still on their credit file. Whereas if they'd done a bankruptcy in the first place, they would have had their credit file cleared when it was annulled and been able to move on with their life and buy a house and those things that we all look for.
Doug, is insolvency, do you look it up in the yellow pages or do you Google it? Obviously this is not a huge industry, there's not a lot of people that have this expertise.
Yes.
So how do we actually find people like you? Now what I'll be doing with you, Doug, of course, is putting you on my wealthplanaustralia.tv website for everybody to hook onto, so I'll be able to find you from there. But how does the average punter find you?
Yes, but through the website is the only way. Certainly there's trustees and there's solicitors and all those that have got some expertise in it, but someone that actually gets in and rolls their sleeves up, if you like, and works with people, it really is just personal contact.
What's the average price for something like this?
The average price does vary, but you'd be looking the most probably between $3,000 and $7,000.
Okay, so to get out of trouble, you need $3,000 to $7,000.
Well, that's the starting point. Then there's the trustees and things like that. But yes.
Okay, Doug, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, there you have it from Doug Constable talking about insolvency. Before you decide to go down that track, follow up somebody like Doug and make the correct decisions. Go onto my website, that's wealthplanaustralia.tv, follow the links, have a chat with Doug if that's where you have to go.